My name is Adele Onyango. I am so honored to have you here for the second edition of Perspective, which is a podcast that is recorded live. I know that sounds like an oxymoron, but yes, it's recorded live and then we post it up much later. But it's a safe space for men and women to talk about gender issues. I'm so happy to see the men in the house today. It seems like we have more men than before, so that's really dope. We can trust Val to be clapping for the men. But so that's an honor, but I'm really honored to have each and every one of you here today. So to help me lead the conversations that we're going to have today, I have different conversation leaders. In other forums, you'd call them panelists. And I'd like to call up first Rachel Mwikali. Please give her a warm round of applause as she comes onto stage. She's done amazing work for women in Kenya. She's a gender justice activist, and she does a lot of work with the Coalition for Grassroots Human Rights Defenders in Kenya. Next person is an award-winning singer and songwriter. His songs were actually playing earlier on while we were waiting to begin. He was formerly known as Cheesy, so I keep calling him Cheesy, by the way, but now he's called Dan Aseda. But one thing that hasn't changed is he's still the crown prince of Benga. Please give him a warm round of applause as he comes on stage. And finally, this is such a millennial thing to say, but we met on Twitter. And today's the first time I'm seeing her face to face. And because she first and foremost is so real online, but also is so vocal on gender issues. And I thought she was a voice that we needed to have here today. So I know her as her Twitter handle on my phone and everywhere else. But today we shall be calling her Jackie Masanga, and she's an advocate of the High Courts. And as you all know, the traffic is pretty crap out there, and Tetushani is on his way, so he will join us as we have the conversation going. So for those of you who are new to Perspective, the reason we call it a safe space is there's no Q&A, as in afterwards. So if we say something that triggers a thought that you want to share, just put your hand up, and we have Shiro right here at the corner, wave. Or Wambaire, you can get her attention. She's shy, but just wave. And we'll make sure a mic comes to you and you can be part of the conversation. Cool? We can start? All right. So first off, I'll set it up with a story, and this is something that actually did happen, all right? Juliano Kanyonyo, 15 years old, a Kenyan boy. He died earlier this year after being sent to a camp. And the camp was together with other teenage boys. It was a traditional ceremony designed to teach him the customary rituals of his people. And one day after returning from this camp, where amongst other things, they were circumcised, he was found dead by his sister at their home in Kandara. This is in central Kenya. And his sister, Lucy Njoki, is actually quoted as saying, "I went to serve him tea. We are not allowed in that house as females, but he wouldn't pick it from outside. But that morning, he did not wake up. I left until mother came, and we peeped to see him lying on the floor with foam on his mouth." The area police commander, Wilson Kasgei, said that the teenager's case was extreme, and he went through serious assaults, hence his death. Kosgei said, traditionally, we're told that the bullying takes place during these traditional camps to harden the boys, but this case is extreme. The post-mortem results showed that this boy went through serious assaults. He could have been hit on the head with an iron or something of the sort. He goes on to say that it's very sad and we're doing everything we can to bring justice to the people involved. They have arrested the mentor, the person who was coordinating the camp, and 6 other boys, and they're treating the case as a criminal investigation. People around the area said that some of the times these things happen so as to harden the boys because real men are hard and have got to be tough by any means necessary. I once had this same conversation on my former radio show, and I had people call in, men, Kenyan men, and share that some of them went through the same camp, and I'm using the word camp loosely here, and amongst other things, other than the beatings, they were forced to eat a lot because real men eat a lot. They were also, in some cases, forced to drink the local brew because real men should be able to handle alcohol, and a lot of other things, some of which were actually beyond the border of what constitutes as abuse. So today, for this episode of Perspective, what we're going to do is peel back the layers, as we always do, for those of you who are new to the podcast, and go back to the genesis of gender roles and our definitions of me as a woman, a Kenyan woman, Dan as a Kenyan man, and when did that transition happen for us from boy to girl, from boy to man rather, and from girl to woman. So at this point, I'd like my conversation leaders to start. Dan, should we start with you? When did that transition happen for you? Like, when did you know, now I am a man and no longer a boy?
That's a very hard question. I don't think it was. I don't want to. I don't want to conceptualize it as an event, because I think that's part of the problem, that we kind of feel as though you become 18, then now you're an adult. It's like some magical thing supposed to happen. But I don't think that these transitions are a single event. I think it's more a series of events and like small, small incremental things. And I think for me, the way that I grew up, this was really more and more responsibility was given to me for things and for situations. And then I think the moment that I kind of accepted that I have maximum responsibility on this thing was when I had to pay rent the second time. So the first time was easy because, you save, you move out. The second time shocked me, like, oh gosh, I have to do this thing again. And now I realized, oh my goodness, nobody else is going to pay it because I live here alone and I have to figure out. So I think for me, that's the time when I don't know if that's when I understood to be a man, but I think that's the time I understood I was an adult. Because now I didn't have anyone else to call to pay this thing, and it had to be paid.
Clap if you also feel like that is something you went through as well. Like it made you feel like I'm now a woman or I'm now a man when you had to pay rent for the second time. Just clap. Come on. I'd like to welcome on stage our final panelist who has just caught us at the beginning, Tetu Shani, award-winning singer and songwriter. We're so glad you made it. I know the traffic is horrible, so we wouldn't give you grief or anything. At this point, I also want to throw in a question before I go to Rachel and Jackie and Tetu. For the women, in terms of the transition from girl to woman, I read a lot online about periods and people claiming that now you are a woman. So personally, on a personal level, when my periods began, it was just an inconvenience. I was like, everything was going so well. And then this. And now I have to adjust. So I didn't feel like now I'm a woman. I felt like not another responsibility, right? So I don't know if there are women, okay, obviously I can see there are women here. If you felt like your periods meant that now you've ascended to becoming a woman or you've transitioned to becoming a woman, clap. If it didn't mean that, clap. And so we can go to Rachel. The transition from girl to woman on a personal level, when did you think that happened for you?
That's a tricky one. Because, like, for me as a person, I still believe I'm a girl and I'm also a woman.
Okay.
It doesn't have to be defined whether I'm getting my periods or not. And also, if for example, I have to look my own way of resistance, and also now girls resist from the household level to other spaces. But the thing about period also, which makes me also be very vocal when it comes to menstrual activism, is the fact on now menstruation is used as one way of violation for women and girls, and not to feel, or not for us to feel we are appreciated or we are human being, but to feel sort of, and also like I like to say this with all the due respect of religion, for those who are religious, but also in one way now religion also uses it as a way of oppression to women and to girls, because you find when you set your own periods, even the way we are socialized when it comes also to the thing we call gender roles. You're told as a girl when you get your period you are unclean, and you wonder like, how does my whole body being as a person and choice and how my body transition have to determine my cleanness and not cleanness. But when boys masturbate, when boys start to have different transformation or transition in their body, they are not told they're unclean. So for me, it comes to a point of being questioned, who comes with this kind of norms that question on how girls and women we need to be, and when it comes to our body. And also now our body is being politicized when it comes to issue to do with menstruation and taking away our dignity. But I still believe like also with our, the way society has been designed in a patriarchal way, is that for the moment you start your period, there are this retrogressive culture like play with boys, you get pregnant. But when boys um, their journey also like producing sperms, they're not told play with girls, make them pregnant. Ama nadanganyana. But girls, you are told you have to be very cautious. Like you have to be put in a manner, you have to feel all the time cautious about yourself and your potential, which demean sometimes on how we looked upon ourselves. Because we have these forces from community level, from family level, even from how we are being looked upon even in the school. You'll find when you start your periods, there's how you're being told, like, especially when it passes your skirt or your
like
dress.
when you stain.
Yeah, when you stain. There's that shame that comes with period. But for me, I think I've learned, or I've reached to a point where I don't have to be ashamed of my period. And I'm like, we have to break these bloody menstruation taboos and let ourselves be. But also we have to challenge these norms that work against us as women and as girls.
Okay.
Yeah,
So Jackie, do you want to add in terms of your transition?
Okay, mine wasn't so much to do with periods. It was, my mother died when I was 17, when I was in Form 4. So I remember after everyone saying sorry, the next thing they told me is, you're the mother now. And yeah, it was a horrible realization to go from, because I was very close to my mother, to now be told you're the mother, and you're grieving, you're shell shocked. And really, I was 17. I was nobody's mother. Yeah. So yeah, for the periods, I just remembered weirdly when I told my mom my periods had started. I had finished class 8. I was going into Form 1, and my mom went ahead and called all her sisters, and my aunts called me to tell me congratulations. So I just remember it was super embarrassing because those days it was a landline, and so my dad standing there, and hello, I want to tell you congratulations. We are so happy for you, mommy. Yeah. So it was weird, embarrassing.
Tetu.
Hi,
Hi, how are you?
I'm great, thanks. Yeah.
So transition from boy to man, was it experiences? Was it one distinct change? Was it a biological change that brought it on for you?
Okay, well, so my dad is Maasai. And in Maasai culture, when you're a boy, before you get circumcised, everyone greets you by touching your head. So I just remember growing up and wishing just really, really getting not excited. I mean, no one really gets excited to get circumcised, but looking forward to it so that now I could like shake my granddad's hand, shake my auntie's hand, shake my dad's hand. So I know like in Maasai culture, there's a very, very distinct sort of transition from being a boy to being a man. Now, I didn't do it completely traditional because once you're circumcised, you go into the bush and you're coached and blah, blah. But like for my dad, it was a really important thing. I mean, even having grown up outside of Kenya, I still came back to get circumcised when I was 14. And then we had a big party, you slaughter a goat, you eat the meat. And then in a cultural sense, from that point on, technically you are this man, And
So I'm just wondering if at that point, were there conversations about what this whole being a man thing is? Or was it just, now you're a man? You know what I mean? So were there conversations either with like uncles or?
No, they weren't. And I think that's kind of one of the products of growing up in a metropolis or in a city. I think we're kind of in a society right now where, like in more ancient cultures, it's like the structures were more set in stone. And the bad thing is that they were set in stone, but then kind of one of the good things is everyone knew exactly what they needed to do. But you get circumcised and then now you're like this man. But my dad really didn't have a conversation with me, about what that looks like in a modern day society. Okay, so I've been circumcised the traditional Maasai way, but I'm not living in a traditional Maasai community.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it was kind of confusing. So we didn't really have that conversation about, well, son, now, this is what it looks like. I mean, he would do little things like when he'd leave on a trip, he'd say, okay, because I'm the firstborn, he'd say, okay, you're the one in charge. You're the one who's handling things. But beyond that, no, there was no real conversation.
So I'm just going to throw this out to everyone. Do you ever, and including us on stage, do you remember ever having a conversation outside of the congratulations during your period with guardians, with parents or uncles, aunties about this transition at any point in time, whether it was sparked by your period, whether it was sparked by an experience the family went through? Do you remember having any conversation about, so now you're growing older, what this means is?
So I was brought up by the lion of Karateng,
Okay.
who was not afraid of any conversation, anywhere, anyhow. And she just came and just gave it to you straight. And so there are very many conversations that we had. And like I said earlier, for me, it wasn't really an event thing, kind of like that we're saying, okay, from today. No, mine was really, okay, this is how you cook ugali. So when you hear this song on the radio, right, it's 1 o'clock. So now cook ugali. Because there's this song, right, it's going to play at 1. And I know you're kind of not really figured out the clock yet. It's okay. Hear this song, cook the ugali, feed your siblings. So that's one thing. Then the next time is like, okay, it's 4 o'clock, go make the tea. Make the tea. And then as we go on, it's like, okay, tea is not made that way, so there's a lesson. Your ugali was kind of floppy, there's a lesson. And then you go to, go wash the car. And slowly I kind of figured out, but in there are some conversations of, hey, I asked you to go wash the car, and I'm not going to repeat myself because I assume you're a grown-up now, right? So it's just kind of hinted. And of course, you don't want to deal with lions in any way that might be confrontational. So you accept the guidance and go do this thing quickly. So for me, my mother was really leading me on a path, but it was very informal. And it was very incremental. Other people may have had other conversations, but I never really listened to them. I was just trying to get out of that conversation quickly.
Anyone wants to add on?
For me, no. The reason why I'm saying no, being like a girl growing up in Mathare, living in Mathare, and a proud Matharian, like me, I learned the hard way. like the street way, the way we call it back home, Madare University way. Like there wasn't like anybody who could tell me like this is how you transition. But the good thing is that despite I was a bit smaller, I was able to engage with a bit sisters who are a bit older than me, meaning sisters within the community levels, that I could hear them speaking about periods. And then I was very curious to want to know what is periods and what does it entail. So by the time I got my period, psychologically I was prepared. But in terms of getting pads, I was not prepared. And now do I start? And how do I get it? Because also like I've lived in a community whereby parents will want to give you or guardian pads, but it's not a privilege at that moment. Or like something you need to have it at that moment. You're either told to choose between food or pads. So like we have never had that conversation until now. But for my sisters or anybody, we could have that conversation. But mostly I learned through youth groups, community-based, through friends. Some were good advice, some were not good advice. And also like the transition part, it's also like self-learned through my own self and through also like seeing the kind of struggle I've gone through also with the transition of periods, because I have like very painful cramps. At first I was like, people are like, it's normal. Yeah, like they were like, it's normal. Periods are very crammy and they are normal. Until when I came to realize, was it 2 years ago? I'm having endometriosis. But if you look before, even the kind of stigma I was getting, you're having painful cramps. 1 minute you're vomiting, the other minute you're getting period. There comes that stigma also. Alidu abortion, mama alifanya nini? You see? So, and also like that's very important, especially also to advocates who do menstrual work. It's really important to talk also with the girls. To what point is menstrual cramp also normal? To what point is it not normal? Because a lot of girls get discriminated because of that. And when it happens, also you feel like there isn't anybody who I can talk with or who can listen with me. But you get all these advice that you are like, later when you come to reflect, you're like, these were like one of the worst advice I ever gotten, or they are one of the best advice I ever gotten. And also, you know, like when it comes to also medical health, also in Kenya in terms of class, where I'm coming from, it's hard when doctors, they don't examine you. They examine you when they see you like, chukua painkiller, take Panadol, but they don't do proper examination. So for me, it has been like a very intimate process for myself, learning it, but breakthrough came when I started using my menstrual cup. I was like, then, it seems like I'm also like getting intimate, knowing myself, in terms of knowing also the amount of blood I release every month, and how is it, and why does it happen this way and not this way, but it has to be a follow-up of different experimentation. Yes.
So I want to throw a question. Please, if you're in the audience, just wave your hand and we'll bring a mic to you. Can you fail, or have you ever felt at a point in time that you failed at being a woman, or you failed at being a man? And what was that experience that made you feel like, me, I'm a failure of a man? So not a failure as a human being, but in that gender kind of box, you felt like, as a woman, I may fail here. Or as a man, I have failed here. Does anyone in the audience want to go? Should I just be a teacher and like, oh, there's someone, where? Oh, Janet!
Thank you. Hello, Adele.
Hi.
Everyone. Such a fantastic space. I love this. I thought I'd comment because I think this is one of the most important conversations ever, because I don't know that one ever stops transiting. And so for me, I think it came when I was a mom for the first time, because we talk about, you know, what the ladies of stage are saying, periods, and that's always a huge transition. No one really warns you for the transitions ahead, I think, in my opinion. You have the baby showers and the bridal showers, but then I don't know if there's ever a very big heart-to-heart about expectations in marriage and motherhood. So I just felt like I was a little lost. I felt like I was doing everything wrong. And It's only when I realized, or I read somewhere, that it's hard if you're doing it right. And so that's the only thing that gave me consolation. And so even now, I just feel like transitions are for life. I have no idea what I'll transition to next year and the year after, but it's nerve-wracking. So yeah, I felt like I failed as a person because I felt like I was failing and not being either present, or even as I was present, was I being good enough? And when I was being good, was I being too good? Did I need to be a little bit bad? And so, yeah, it's something I still struggle with every day. But I think it's just knowing that transitions are just that. You're supposed to be on transit. I don't know if you're ever supposed to transit and reach the end unless you're dying. But in the meantime, it's a journey. And so for me, it's a stark reality every day when I look at my sons. I'm like, am I good enough? Yeah. Am I failing? Am I doing the best I can? So, yeah.
Do you think sometimes are you judging yourself based on society's definitions of what a woman is or should be?
I think so, because you look at all the white picket fences and smiling parent magazine poses, and you're like, this looks like a piece of cake. Wrong. So yeah, I think it's a little bit of what society outlines something to be. And that's why it's important that we're super real with people when they're going through transitions. Because it can really traumatize you if you're not prepared for when things get really thick and you're not really taught to cope. You cope as you go along. There's no syllabus, there's nothing, curriculum. Yeah. And so, yes, it's society painting a certain picture. I'm glad it's changing a lot, but there's still quite a bit to be done, just giving people, the reality check. So, yes.
So I want to hear from the men as well. Like, what has there been a point that you felt I have failed as a man?
Yeah, there's been many.
Okay.
Just supposed to pick one, eh? Okay. I just feel like even just that whole transition of adolescence to manhood, like it's kind of just about sort of the messages that you're given about what masculinity is. In my house, like growing up, like my dad's place, it was, you're good at fixing things. I'm terrible at fixing things. Like even now, I'm married, been married for like 4 years. Like my wife is better at fixing things than me. And it's, why are you guys laughing? What's that?
Because in your house.
Yeah, so fixing things, you can open up the bonnet of a car and you just look at it and know exactly what is going on. I'm also terrible at that. And so I literally had to just kind of come up with my own definition and say, okay, like for me, what am I actually good at? I give great advice. And that's become my role in the house. Like I know exactly what to tell my son. I know exactly what to tell my wife most of the time. And so, yeah, but there's been all these other markers that are such random little things where you're just like, you're there reaching, you can't figure out the light bulb, and then you feel like a pain in your chest, like, my God. So, yeah, that's my...
I think the only thing I can add to that, well, first I'll just reinforce lots of times, right? This is not, failure is a permanent part of life, and especially my understanding of failure is a permanent part of male life. You understand that you will fail, and then you will, the arc of the story is that eventually you will succeed. But that's the theory. Sometimes you fail and then it never comes back. And like in the training, like social training, you're told she'll say no, but it's okay. Then just try again and try again. Now you're like, it's abuse, but you're trying again. Because you've been trained, just try again. Failure is part of this thing. But this person is telling you, I don't want anything to do with you. But you're trying again because in the end, I'm supposed to succeed at this thing. And I think the worst that I can say, actually, the worst that I, from experience is, and I think maybe it's society, I don't understand, but I think it's also church very heavily. This notion of a provider, that thing is a very heavy burden to carry. Because the day you can't provide, even if you're able to reach half, right? Just like half. And I wrote a whole song about it. Because there was this girl, right? that wants to go on a date. But I can't afford to take her to this place. But I'm the provider. So I'm not really in a position to tell her, see, we go half and half. It's not really... There's no room. No, you can't. There's no room. Well, you would like to, but there's no room. And it's actually the hardest one. So people walk around town really struggling with that thing of being provider, and church has told you you are the head of the house. So the biggest problems are coming to you. So you have this intense, continuous fear of not being able to handle that big one. I'm happy to handle the other ones, but I'm afraid that this big one, if I'm not able to handle this big one, I'll have reached, and I'm cracking jokes about the date, but that stuff hurts. Like, it really hurts because, and it's the same thing that you carry all through the rest of life, not being able to handle that big one. And unfortunately, psychologically, having been brought up or come to understand that this is the thing you do, this is a real issue for people, and probably explains why people then rarely come to say, I can't do it, because that's the admission. And remember, the training was try again. So now if you're going to accept that, okay, I can't do it, it means now you can't. Are you saying you're not going to try again? Because you're supposed to try again. And people are just at the end of the rope and they can't talk.
We'll always come back and say, okay, babe, you'll forgive her because you think, yeah, women are emotional. They're allowed to. But what if I become emotional? What if I start breaking down here?
You need to calm down. Like, what the hell? And I don't know which man has ever told a woman to calm down and she came. What's the calmed down? Even the English is going. And then she calmed down. Yeah,
Women pay bill, girls pay bills in Nairobi. And we don't talk the way, we don't say the way guys go parading, taking aujas and saying, you see.
How about we sit back and look at men as just human beings? And so you're insecure about a lot of things. Have I done this right? Have I not? If not, if X comes and does it better, where will I be? Oi. So because of that,